Next.
Item 6B, receive the mid-year financial update report as of December 31st, 2018, and adopt a resolution approving the second quarter budget amendment for the fiscal year 2018-19 operating and capital budget.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Keith DeMartini, the Finance Director for the City. It's my pleasure to present the Quarter 2 Fiscal Year 18-19 financial projection to you this evening. The objective of this evening's presentation is twofold. One is to receive the Quarter 2 report as of the end of December 31st, 2018, and number two, adopt a resolution amending the current fiscal year budget for operating and capital expenditures by approving of various budget amendments described in the staff report, which I will summarize here with you this evening. So the agenda is just to provide a really brief overview of the current fiscal year operating budget. I'll go into a little bit of detail on the general fund, the enterprise fund, and the internal service funds, the projection through mid-year, provide an overview of the budget amendments, and then my request to council. The city's current fiscal year begins on July 1st, 2018, and it ends on June 30th, 2019. This evening, I'll be presenting an overview of data through the end of December 31st, 2018, midway through the fiscal year. I'll plan to come back to you sometime in April to provide an update through the end of Q3. And then the Quarter 4 update will typically occur during our comprehensive annual financial statement review, which happens typically in January for the entire fiscal year's worth of activity. So the city does have existing budget challenges with a $1.7 million deficit that is funded by the use of fund balance in the general fund. Tonight's update will provide insight into how we project to end this current fiscal year. The revenue pie chart on the left shows the proportional share of major revenue sources in the general fund, with the majority of funding coming through property tax and sales tax. And then on the expenditure pie chart on the right, you will see that the major city functions that are funded by the general fund are 62% for the public safety functions. Police and fire departments, they have a 24-hour operation and they provide a full complement of services to the community. And again, just a reminder, these are pie charts just for the city's general fund. The city does receive revenue and funds critical operations in various enterprises and special revenue funds as well, including, for example, the water and the wastewater funds, which do represent a significant allocation of resources for operations and capital improvements for our infrastructure. So I'll just present a really high-level overview of our revenues through the end of Q2 of the current fiscal year compared to the same time frame last fiscal year. So in summary, you'll see that through Q2, we have expended about 45% of our total budget, which is exactly the same as where we were last fiscal year at the same point in time. Property tax is typically paid by property owners in two installments, in December and April, so we got a substantial amount of property tax revenue in December. For sales tax, revenues are approximately $500,000 more compared to the same period last year. The California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, it's formerly the Board of Equalization at the state level, they've made progress in catching up, processing many state sales tax remittances after a pretty significant delay with the new software implementation that they embarked on last year. We do retain a sales tax advisor, and working with them, we project to be on target, on budget for our sales tax revenue. So moving on to our general fund expenditures. Just an overview through Q2 compared to last fiscal year at the same time. Our expenditures through Q2 are at 51% of total budget, which is just slightly higher than 50% where we were last fiscal year at this time. Our second quarter expenditures were $24.5 million as shown here. And all these departments in the general fund, they are, in my opinion, within an acceptable range at this point of the fiscal year. It's nothing to be concerned about. We plan on either coming in at or slightly under budget towards the end of the fiscal year. So just a summary of our four enterprise funds. Water and wastewater revenues for the second quarter came in as expected. They include 6 months of service charges from the 5-year rate plan that the City Council approved back in May of 2017. The cable revenues are consistent to last year at the same time as well. showing that they're coming in just about on budget for their expenditures versus their revenues. And then the stormwater fees are collected through the county property tax roll, with the first payment expected in December. Again, no major issues that I see at this time for any of our enterprise funds. So just a really high-level summary of the 4 internal service funds. Again, just a reminder, these funds operate more like a business, and they exclusively support the city's internal operations. Charges for these funds are transacted on a monthly basis in the finance department based on allocations that are adopted in the adopted budget every fiscal year. You'll see there is a slight increase in self-insurance expenditures through the second quarter compared to the second quarter at the same time last fiscal year. Our general liability insurance premiums and claim costs for workers' compensation has increased a little bit, and this is something that we'll be looking at very closely as we're entering into budget development for fiscal year 19-20. So just in summary, going through a number of tables with you now, my major takeaways in the general fund are that revenues are coming in as expected. There's no major issue with any of our revenue sources in the general fund. Our expenditure run rates are within a normal, acceptable range that I would expect to see at this point in time during the fiscal year. And there really are no major issues that are bubbling to the top for me to report to council at this time. Again, same thing with our enterprise funds and our internal service funds, normal expected activity. And now that we have 6 months of actual expenditure and revenue data, I'll be working very closely with department staff to use up-to-date data as we prepare our fiscal year 19-20 budget. That's much more real-time, much more accurate, real projection data that we can use to develop our budget proposals for you. The staff report does list a number of budget amendments that we're requesting City Council approval this evening. There are 5 requests for the general fund that we are proposing to use available fund balance. I do want to make sure that you are aware that this reduction in fund balance, if council is to approve it, of about $70,000, does not impact our current reserve policy thresholds of retaining funds equaling 25% of our total annual general fund expenditures. In other words, we have capacity to appropriate this money. It will not impact our reserve policy. The first item is the city is intending to enter into agreement with a property tax consulting firm for $7,500 for this fiscal year. We would like this firm to conduct a variety of technical auditing functions on our property tax revenue base, with matching property taxes with business licenses, comparing with other jurisdictions. We will also be getting some really great advanced reporting capability from the consultant, and we will plan to request ongoing funding for these services in the 19-20 budget. The second item is the city intending to enter into an agreement with a transient occupancy tax consulting firm for the amount not to exceed $20,000. We're proposing that this firm would conduct a full-scale audit on the 12 hotels located in San Bruno. They'll be looking at comparing the accuracy of their filed lodging records with returns and activity reports, both at their desk and on-site at the hotels. This is a one-time audit request, so this will not be a recurring request, but we would revisit in a future subsequent budget cycle if we intend to do this again. The third item is a request to approve of budget so that we can process a second amendment with our agreement with Economic and Planning Systems Incorporated. They're the consulting firm that were integral in getting us the Nexus study for the Development Impact Fee program. There was additional services that the city required EPS to perform as we were making technical updates to the study from feedback received from the public hearings, as well as drafting and revising the ordinance and the resolution to present to council. We'd also like to appropriate $4,700 for Public Works to increase the postage fee budget for costs associated with public outreach for the Scott Street grade separation project. The city did receive a grant, but the city is required to fund the public noticing requirement costs. And then the final general fund request is for $25,000 for Public Works to increase their professional services budget to perform surveying for land dedication that has not yet been completed on El Camino Real at San Bruno Avenue roadway expansion and geotechnical studies. There's one request in the solid waste grant fund for $3,700. The revenue was budgeted accurately in fiscal year 18-19 and completely, but this is an additional appropriation on the expenditure side so that we can use all of the grant revenue that the city has brought in. And it will allow us to purchase additional trash receptacles at various park locations. There are a number of requests in the Water Enterprise Fund for $13,500 for additional gas and oil expenses. There were some underestimation of what the expenses should be, and so we would like to increase the appropriation there. $85,000 for additional contractual services with West Valley Construction for repairs that were resulted from multiple water main breaks at Shelter Creek, Sweeney Ridge Tank 7, and other locations. $35,000 for additional water quality testing and laundry services. This is anticipated due to more water breaks this current fiscal year than were originally anticipated. And then the last item on the water fund is $35,000 to rent a portable generator at the water pump station, which is an essential facility that provides potable water for fire flow. There is a current emergency standby generator that has experienced a leak in the diesel tank, and we can no longer use it. So we need to purchase this portable generator, and staff will continue to look at the feasibility of the long-term solution of this going forward. In the wastewater fund, there's a request for $624,499, which represents a shortfall, not really a shortfall, but basically not complete information that we received in working with South San Francisco on our quality control plant for what the annual allocation for our contribution should be for the debt service on that facility. The original estimate we received was significantly lower. We do have available unappropriated funds in the wastewater fund to appropriate this money, and this is consistent with prior fiscal year amounts and what is expected in the upcoming budget year. And then finally, Measure A, a request for $80,000 to conduct a traffic study for the Scott Street grade separation project. And it reflects a proposal from a consulting firm along the west side of Scott Street. So my request to council this evening is to receive the second quarter financial update report as of the end of December 31st, 2018. And I request that you adopt a resolution approving of the second quarter budget amendment for the fiscal year 18-19 operating and capital budget. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Questions for the director?
Nope, I'm good.
Any action by council? It's a resolution.
So let me think. Move to approve the resolution.
Second, please.
I second.
Melissa?
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor O'Connell?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.